And we're back, darling.
Hello.
Hello again. So, welcome to Ken, if you're just joining us. And we're going to be covering the second part of the Suit of Wands from the Healing Light Tarot, going from card number 8 right through to the King. So, starting with the 8. This was the second card I created in the deck.
Okay.
So, it's kind of, I always do the 8 of Wands either first or second whenever I'm creating a deck, and usually because it's actually visually quite an easy card to do, so it gives you a kickstart.
Yeah.
In the case of the Healing Light Tarot, I'd done the World card because I'd sort of adapted it from some previous artwork that I had, and then I kind of moved straight onto this one. It's almost kind of like, for me, it's a tarot deck creator's talisman, because that, for me, kind of sums up when you're ready to start the deck. You know, it's the sort of 8 is the swiftness card, and it's that sort of unimpeded movement card. So I've done something fairly traditional here. It's kind of quite like the way Smith, the wands are going up rather than down. You can see they're sort of flying over a city landscape. They're glowing at the tips. You know, I kind of almost wanted them like fireworks, and yeah, they're kind of just flying through the mandala. I think, you know, of all the cards in the tarot, I think for me, this is the most straightforward. You know, it's the one that sort of, it speaks for itself. It's just complete unimpeded movement. It's almost like, I love this. It's almost like sort of, you know, if you've been struggling with creative blocks, or, you know, you've had obstacles work-wise or with a creative project or whatever, even if it's obstacles within a relationship, it's as if almost somebody just kind of pulls the blocks out of the way and you can just, wham, surge forward and make progress.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, yeah, like you say, it's one of those cards that it's seldom changed much in other decks.
Yeah.
You know, there are exceptions. There are decks that just, you know, reinvent the whole notion of the card. But as I say, you've taken the main traditional elements of it, but again, you've kind of tweaked it here and there. Like I say, the direction of the wands is different, and you know, you've put in a little bit of the city landscape and things like that. They're all things again that help us as a modern reader or modern querent to relate to the cards, rather than sometimes often like fairy tale-esque things of the original ones. And I always see this as a really positive card. I mean, I have years ago. I remember I was walking down Glastonbury High Street, and it was a bit of a windy day, and out of nowhere, a card blew at my feet, face down.
Yeah.
I looked around and I picked it up. And when I picked it up, it was the 8 of Wands, and it was from I forget which deck it was from. I think it was from the Is it the Aquarian Tarot?
God, you never told me this.
Yeah, no. I thought I'd mentioned it, but this was years ago. This was at a time where I was juggling a lot of options, and I was struggling to make sense of what I should do for the best.
Yeah,
and through various scenarios, I was kind of just feeling as though I was stuck and that there wasn't any action. And at the time, you know, going to Glastonbury was a respite for me. It was a place to go to sort of just blow the cobwebs away.
Yeah.
And then just to have this random tarot card blow up my feet, and I've still got it somewhere. I've put it in one of my books. Yeah, I've kept it ever since. And it's just such a random thing. I mean, of all the cards and all the places, you know,
just so happens.
Ah, yes, there you go.
I have it here. We've got to show them this. But that is really random, isn't it?
Yeah. You know? And I mean, it wasn't an out of season time either, so it's quite busy. But when I looked around, nobody seemed to be going, "Oh, I've lost a card," or "I've dropped something."
Yeah.
Nobody seemed everybody was oblivious to it, to be honest. Yeah, that one.
For the benefit of people watching, the 8 of Rods from the gorgeous David Palladini Aquarian Tarot. Yeah.
Just a random event in my life. Wow. 8 of Wands.
Actually, we talked in the last video about 2 other decks, the Robin Wood Tarot and the Norbert Lush Cosmic Tarot. Funny enough, their 8 of Wands are two of my, from those decks are two of my favorites. You were saying about me modernizing this from the Pamela Coleman Smith. I mean, I kind of took my lead from Robin Wood, because you see her wands are kind of flying high above the earth, and you've got planets in the background. I remember the first time I saw this, and I just thought, wow, you know, because this was one of the, you know, I spent years working only with 3 decks off and on, and then sort of in my early 30s, I started really exploring what was out there in earnest. But the Robin Wood was one of the first decks I bought, and of course it was the first really modern deck that I bought. And I can remember just seeing this and thinking, oh, I love that. Just an amazing modern take on, you know, a timeless archetype. But equally, my favorite 8 of Wands of all time is from the Norbert Lush Cosmic Tarot, because it shows somebody jumping through the air with the wands.
Oh yeah.
And I absolutely love this.
And I think that's something that's off missing from the ones, is the human figure, which obviously is in pretty much all of the other minors.
Yeah.
And the 8, with its exclusion from it, it sometimes can throw you off in a reading.
With mine, I mean, I haven't put a human figure in there, but it was that kind of energized, electrically charged kind of thing I wanted to, which I suppose is the thing that runs right the way through the suit of wands for me, because they're all blazing with fire and energy charged. And it's also that thing, I mean, well, you know, people will have noticed by now, I chose a specific color scheme for each suit, you know, or variations on it. So for wands, I was inspired very much by not just orange fire, but I love blue fire as well. You know, when you see those sort of blue gas flames, or sometimes you even get green flames. But I love that juxtaposition of orange and blue, and I wanted that very much in what I was doing here. So, but yeah, there is something, a little something of each of these other 2 decks energetically, I think, in, you know, in my depiction, because I just love the sort of crackling fire that both of them managed to evoke. So that's my 8. Where are we?
Number 9.
Yeah. Now 9 and 10, I have diverged from Pamela Coleman Smith in my own way. The basic meanings are the same. You know, I've kind of taken the lead again from the Golden Dawn keyword, you know, which in this case is the Lord of Great Strength. So I kind of thought, well, how do I want to reinterpret that? And I love the sort of victorious stance of the weightlifter when the dumbbells go right above his head, and it's almost like that defiant show of strength that I loved. And again, that's why the dumbbells are in the mandorla. It's that, you know, it's reaching that peak when the weights have been lifted to their full height, and there's a kind of sense of attainment, but there's also a staying power in that I kind of really admire in the weightlifter, which is, you see in Pamela Coleman Smith's card. I mean, you see the wounded warrior, you know, literally doggedly holding his ground with that fence of wands, you know, as a you know, either a protective shield or a protective barrier. But yeah, I kind of thought, for me, there's just something about the weightlifter imagery that did it for me here.
Yeah, I mean, for this one, when I first, you know, got your deck and I was like thumbing through to see this was one that stood out to me initially as like, oh, I'm not sure what to make of that.
What's going on?
Because the figure was so different from the, you know, the battered and bruised thing. But then as time went on, and obviously, I mean, at the time, not so much these days, but at the time, I used to be quite an avid gym goer, and I used to lift weights and things like that. And you know, there is that old gym adage of no pain, no gain, and it's almost, I that's when I suddenly started to see that in that was that, you know, you can achieve so much, but you have to, in a way, you have to suffer for it to a degree. And again, that echoes back off the 5 from the last video, but it's in a bit more of a state of ownership in the 9, that you are, you know, owning it.
Yeah, very much so. But it to me, it's not an easy card, but it's a very powerful and positive one, because like you said, no pain, no gain. But by this stage, the gain is really significant. You know, And I think in a way, it kind of highlights how with the tarot suits, certainly in the masculine suits of swords and wands, they kind of reach their peak at the 9. And then the 10s tend to be a bit of overkill where it goes wrong, you know. I think it's different with the feminine suits, isn't it, with cups and pentacles, because you just see the positives of the 9s amplified to the next level in the 10s.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, this for me is the pinnacle of the suit of wands. This is kind of where he's got the balance right, you know, and this is where the attainment is. And again, that's kind of why, again, the placement of the mandorla was very simple on this. You know, it is just about around the lifted weights.
Yeah.
You know, all the effort he's put in has paid off, and that's where the healing is in this.
Yeah.
You know, it's a job well done. So
yeah.
Let's go on to my 10, because this is one of the oddest cards in the
And
whole
again,
Healing Light Tarot.
I've actually really come to like this depiction of the 10, because one of the things that often is found in the more standard decks, you know, and people talk about, you know, the person trying to carry this bundle of staves up a hill or whatever, you know, and there's all this question of, oh, you know, who said he has to take them all up in one go, and you know, all of these things, and yet this completely does away with that, but it really it's the literal bug on your back. It's so it just spells it all out to you without being quite as abstract, you know, because more often than not, that bug that's on your back is self-inflicted. And this just summed that up for me perfectly. I really loved the uniqueness of this.
I can't take credit for this imagery. I'll tell you this is the one card that has a very specific story behind it, I think more than any other in the deck. I was kind of thinking about how I was going to tackle the 10 of Wands, because you've just hit the nail on the head for this. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Pamela Coleman Smith's depiction, but I often think there are things read into it that aren't there. In that, you know, if you go back to the Golden Dawn tradition, that obviously she was creating the Waite-Smith Tarot from within. You know, I think my instinct with the minors of the Waite-Smith is, if you read the pictorial key, Arthur Waite's descriptions of the cards are kind of really, they're weak at best, or they're blinds at worst. It's almost as if he's kind of trying to throw you off guard. Now, once I kind of discovered the Golden Dawn system, which obviously was secret within the order and was not to be shared outside, I kind of realized he was straddling a really dangerous tightrope in, you know, in sort of commissioning an illustrator to create, you know, a widely published tarot deck. He was following that Golden Dawn pattern. And when you put the Golden Dawn keywords next to Pamela Coleman Smith's images, all of a sudden those images make real sense in a way that they haven't done before. But the irony is that those Golden Dawn keys were kind of part of the secrets of the order. And I realized that he's alluded to them visually, and she did. But then when it comes to the text, he really goes off on tangents to avoid them. And there's been a lot of discussion about, you know, the man in that card, you know, maybe needs to carry his burden differently. You know, as you said, there's a more efficient way of carrying these wands. Put them down and then bundle them back together, put them back on your shoulder. Most people see that as the main meaning of the card. But actually, when you go back to the Golden Dawn meaning, it's really quite brutal. It's called the card of oppression. And I thought, let's kind of get back to that basic. I'm a great admirer of Nigel Jackson's, and in his first deck, it was originally published as the Nigel Jackson Tarot, and then latterly as the Medieval Enchantment Tarot. And his card is quite brutal. You know, it kind of shows prisoners with an oppressor with a whip or something like that. But it you know, and I kind of thought, yeah, I want to show that pure meaning of the card. And I wasn't sure how to. And then I made a chance discovery of why I said I can't take credit for this imagery. I made chance discovery of an amazing, I think he's Russian, surrealist digital artist called Igor Morsky. And he does these incredible, really high-end surrealist photo collages. Obviously photographs everything himself. And then, you know, it's just, and do check out his website if you can find it. Now, I found this image of this old guy with this giant cockroach strapped, tied round him. So he's bent double and he's carrying the weight of this cockroach. And I looked and I thought, there's my 10 of wands. And what I did was I used that image to create this silhouette, because up until that stage, I really wasn't sure how I was going to tackle this card. And as soon as I saw that image, it completely encapsulated everything I wanted to say about the oppression of this card, and also the fact that that oppression can be really horrific. I mean, the original Igor Morsky image, because it is a full pictorial image, it just made my flesh creep. And I thought, yeah, it's kind of quite an obscure reference, but in basing a silhouette on that image, I think as far as oppression goes, that's kind of everyone's worst nightmare, isn't it? So that's my little tribute to Igor Morsky. And quite frankly, I couldn't do it better than he did.
No.
Hence the silhouette. It's based on his original image. But yeah, I thought about, my own instances in my own life where, I've kind of been under oppression. And yeah, there are the arguments that very often you're carrying burdens that you don't need to. And actually, I look back in my own life and I could see that. But yeah, it's a similar thing. I mean, you could argue he could just cut the ties, get a knife, cut the ropes, throw the thing off your back. But I thought there was something a bit more raw about the iconography of this than the usual guy with, the bundle of rods on his back. Some of the ones actually are just stood there almost mocking this guy. He could.
And I think it's quite interesting the way that you've got them on an escalation, and then that the mandala is separate, but the flame of the wand is still within that mandala, but it's separate from the wands.
Well, when you think actually, this isn't even the flame of one of the wands. You've got your 10 wands here, and this is the flame of a star. And I was kind of thinking about this, and I thought these kind of situations, when you're under this kind of oppression, the answers very often are really way outside and in the distance, and for him to get any kind of healing, he's got to cast this burden off, and he's got to go in a completely different direction. And sometimes we're not even lucky enough to have that choice. I mean, this is another one kind of quite like the Nine of Swords, in sometimes, just pardon me, I'll edit that out. Sometimes that kind of awfulness just happens, and you don't get the choice. So again, I think it's kind of not quite as severe as the Nine of Swords, in that there is healing potential in this card, but it's kind of not on his path. It's at once remove. And there was something this was an instinctive thing to kind of show a slanting progression. But I did kind of get the sense that those wands were on another path, and they were sort of mocking him. There's plenty of strength in the wands, but not where he is. They've got all the strength.
He's facing and heading, down the progression of the wands as well. So it's almost as though, even though that bug is upside down on his back, it's almost as though he's not the one that's actually in control. He's being steered away from, his successes and his potential. Whereas actually, if he stands up straight, that bug will fall off his back, and then all he has to do is turn around, and there's that star. And it sounds so simple, and yet we know that in our own minds it is so much more difficult to actually act on these things.
I mean, the argument is as well, if this is tied to him, then it's not that simple. And I kind of wanted that ambiguity of some situations that you can escape from, others that you can't. And I think you've kind of got to form your own judgment on that when this comes up in a reading. It's the one card that I've had the most comments about, because people just say to me, why did you do that? And the simple answer is, I came across a really inspiring artist, and it's based on his vision, because he just encapsulated everything I wanted to say in this card. As I say, I've not slavishly copied him. This is a silhouette based on the figure that was in his image, but it's very rare that an image kind of arrests me in the way that did. And as I say, do check this guy out, Igor Morsky, an amazing digital collage artist with a really incredible surrealist vision. Great guy. So So that's my 10. So anyone wondering, yeah, that's why it's odd. It was one of the quirks of the deck and where I really did go off on a tangent, but hopefully it's stayed true to the meaning of the card. So
right,
we're into courts. Yeah.
Mr. Page.
Page of Wands. Yeah. I love this card. Not just specifically my version. I love the Page of Wands.
Mm.
In his positive aspect, it's I love the sort of the concept of the Princess of Wands in the Thoth, where Frida Harris talks about the earthy part of fire, and it then brings you to that sort of it kind of brings you into that realm of anything earthy that's flammable. And I often think of the Page of Wands as like a firework and just light the blue touch paper. He kind of brings that really fiery message. It's that sort of fiery initiation, like the ace, but just in a in a more human way. It's personified. So for me, the wand that he's holding is almost like the lit firework, and he's a standard bearer. He's a staff bearer for the royal court, for the king, and the wand is his message. The sort of light that it carries. How do I see him? I see him on several levels. I mean, if it's a personality archetype, I see this as the archetypal child, from the point of view of innocence and wonder, at everything around him and all the creative potential of the world. I see him as a child in that it's that sort of childlike quality when new creative projects are initiated and begin to blossom. Again, there's that light the blue touch paper essence, because we're into the realm of earth combined with fire. All those positive things. So for me, I mean, if he turns up in a reading, it's male or female. This is somebody, in a state of emergence, but has this huge enthusiasm. So I mean, in a practical play, in a workplace, or in a kind of creative project, this is somebody who comes in new. They're at the bottom of the promotional pile, but they bring huge amounts of energy and enthusiasm and joy into everything that they do. Do that with it. I mean, if you're looking at the dark aspect of this quality, I mean, this is kind of the sort of person that refuses to grow up and take responsibility.
I was literally just going to say, I was going to say Peter Pan. There is that notion of it.
Yeah. And it starts to lose all dignity when somebody is sticking in this phase way past where they should have grown up.
Yeah. It becomes immaturity, doesn't it?
Immaturity, the shirking of responsibility, and also, it's that kind of childish mentality of, not owning up to things. It's like, it wasn't me, it was him. There's a deviousness about it. But then it's also, internal creative blocks. When you just can't get started. When that something's in there and waiting to be birthed. Anyone who's a creative has been through this. I think the negative side of the Page of Wands, the message just kind of refuses to get delivered. But I do love this card. There's so many different aspects to him. Page of Wands, Princess of Wands, whichever way.
I think that's the point, though, isn't it? The court cards, as much as, like I've said before, I struggle with them, and a lot of people do struggle with them, and a lot of people just take them at the very basic surface values, where actually there's so much going on. Once you actually stop and think about, not just the fact that it's a person with a wand or a torch, or there's more to it than that. That it both literal and figurative. It kind of, you've got to really kind of scratch below the surface to actually get to the core of what a lot of the court cards are actually trying to say, rather than just take it as a knee-jerk. Oh well, it's a message. We get messages every day. Doesn't mean that they're necessarily pertinent to the situation that you're trying to get a reading for.
And I think there's a certain amount in the images, but then a certain amount comes from just playing with the elemental combinations and that's one of the things that really, when you kind of begin to translate those elemental combinations into personality types, that's when it becomes really interesting to me. Just one little bit of fun on here. There's my homage to Pamela Coleman Smith. There's 3 pyramids on there, which you see on the page of Wands in the Waite-Smith, and also on the Knight, and I've kind of mirrored them in there. That's just one of those. It's one of those little sort of things that little trademarks of the Waite-Smith that I kind of always love putting in there. You know, there's no sort of specific explanation for why they're there. You know, Waite doesn't give us any explanation, but it's there's probably some kind of esoteric significance, and yeah, that's kind of me just playing with the symbols. So yeah, so that's my page. Moving on to my Knight, one of my favorites of the court cards. I love this archetype, I really do. Heir of Fire. So this is kind of where the fire of creativity and procreativity, you know, the flames get fanned with the wind, and you know, we all know how oxygen feeds fire.
Yeah.
And that really sums up the kind of sweeping motion of the Knight. And you know, I love the traditional readings of this, where the Knight of Wands, you know, if you're in a workplace, you know, this is the kind of guy that just sweeps in and turns everything upside down with a certain amount of creative chaos, but will ultimately change things for the better in his positive aspect. It kind of brings in, you know, this guy brings in fresh perspectives. You know, he kind of brings in fresh amounts of motivation and enthusiasm for all the people around him. You know, this is generally a really warm and amiable personality. I mean, if you're looking at, I mean, this is the other way I enjoy, you know, looking at court cards, you know, is, you know, you can look at them as archetypes of just as basic personalities, but then particularly when you look at them in the realm of love and relationships, you know, if you're looking at this guy as an archetypal lover, I mean, God, I mean, you know, you want to be in bed with this guy. You know, this is fire plus a bit of wind to fan the flames and more fire. You know,
yeah.
As a lover, you know, this Knight is a devastatingly good lover. You know, he may not be the most emotionally deep. You know, you'll get the ride of your life, and you know, you'll come away feeling very, you know, very, very affirmed from it.
Possibly a bit singed as well.
Bit singed, yeah. I think, you know, in relationships, people like this do, you know, you do get your fingers burnt a little bit with people like this.
Yeah.
You know, because they storm in at full speed, and you know, I think you sometimes have to put the brakes on this kind of character within a relationship and just say, whoa, you know, just rein it back a little bit. Let's take it at a more sensible pace. It's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, if you do that, it is a bad thing, because yeah, you really get your fingers burned, because you know, this guy, you know, whether it's in a work situation, a love situation, will just storm in with no sense of the consequences, or you know. And I think this kind of fire fanned by a strong wind without any sense of conscience begins to get really dangerous.
Yeah.
You know, I think Knight of Swords and Knight of Wands, they're very proactive champion figures. If they've got good motives, they are, you know, really they will really fight your corner. If they've got bad motives, they just turn ruthless.
Yeah.
And you know, a guy like this or a woman like this, whichever, you know, they really can fan the flames of trouble if they're not coming from the right place.
Yeah.
So, where they tend to burn the house down if they're left unchecked.
Yeah, I do find that one tends to crop up when there's those kind of almost potentially volatile situations or relationships. Usually in a reading, I'd like to see him surrounded by, you know, a couple of cups, a couple of swords, you know, just to even
for the fire.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, again, the mandorla is around the glowing tip of his wand. You know, I kind of felt the same thing. In fact, this is the theme that kind of follows through. Let's have a look. All 4 of my court cards with the wands, because the wand is the message. You know, upright for good, You know, if you're looking at the dark side of this, then that message gets distorted. But yeah, but no, tempered with a few cups. That's
better.
Should we have a look at the Queen?
Yes, because this is one of my favorite, if not the favorite of the deck.
Is it?
Yes.
Interestingly enough, it was Low Scarabaeus' favorite because
they put it on the box.
It's on the box. I mean, we've got the Chariot on one side, the Queen of Wands on the other, and I was pleased at that choice. It kind of, you know, it kind of brought positive energy to the packaging. But yeah, I was really pleased with this. Again, this was directly inspired by a statue of Kali that I found. I based the silhouette on that. But I always see the Queen of Wands as very highly sexually charged. And the versions of the card that I love very often express that. I love Stevie Postman's Cosmic Tribe Tarot because, you know, you see, you know, the fire serpent on that card, you know, the sort of very sexually charged dancing woman. I love the kind of sinuous nature of the multi-armed goddess. But there's also, this one I was happy with because I kind of got the color combination right. I love the Queen of Wands. She's a contradiction in terms. Water of fire. You know, the queens represent water, but, you know, we're in the realm of fire, and wherever fire and water hit, you get steam. You know, and to me, this personality, this is like, you know, again, if you go from the perspective of Frida Harrison, the Thoth, water of fire, liquid fire, you're into the realm of volcanic lava, molten rocks, you know, fire flowing in rivers. That's what she is. You know, it's passions, creativity, procreativity, literally just flooding out of her. And she's got a fire top wand, but that's not where the mandala is. Again, this is quite a sexually charged image. You see fire coming from between her legs, and that's in the center of the mandala here. Because again, this is, for me, this is a figure, passion just floods out of her, whether that's sexual passion, you know, this is, you know, as an archetype, as a lover, you know, this is, you know, I've heard, I think, was it Frida Harris referred to this card as the fount of sexual energy? I think it might have been, but I've heard it described as, you know, the Queen of Wands described as that. And that's what I wanted to show here. You know, sexual energy, again, libido energy, it's a wider metaphor for all of our creative powers. And I just love this Queen. I really love the Queen of Wands because her heart is on her sleeve, her passions are on her sleeve. Nothing is hidden. It just, bam, you know.
Yeah.
Don't look for subtlety here, but profundity, yes.
Yeah, no, there's definitely. I mean, I like the way that you've managed to represent the fire and the water without it seeming either disjointed or contradictory. You know, you've got that fire of passion with the fecundity of the water, and then this emanation of creativity and proactiveness that's, you know, emanating from her. You know, and she has the wand in her hand. In a you know, in a role of authority, but it's not the focus, it's not the important thing. It's more, you know, living your life and doing what you love, kind of, you know, rather than, oh, I've got to do this because that's the way it's meant to be or whatever. I wouldn't say necessarily a rule breaker, but definitely a rule bender.
Yeah, and she is, it's the authenticity of this Queen that I love, because you know, there's kind of, you can't really hide anything with, you know, a character like this. Do that to her, oh God, do you know when this woman is around, or this man is around, you know, whether this is depicting a man or a woman, or, you know, when this person is around, you know, because everything about them is like clashes of opposites, clashing fire and water, steam all over the place, explosions all over the place. My grandmothers were like this. Yeah, both my grandmothers were inverted Queen of Wands. Particularly my maternal grandmother. She was the most volatile person that I knew. But, even to old age, she kind of never managed to get that into check. I mean, you have this figure upright and they kind of somehow managed to channel the volatility.
Yeah.
Do that, my nan never did, bless her.
Yeah. I mean, just looking at that now, you've turned it up. So when you've turned it upside down, the first thing I seen with the inverted silhouette was a spider and the femme fatale. And because if you go back to the original film noirs, the femme fatales were passionate and deadly and did everything that they shouldn't do, but ultimately it led to their downfall. They very seldom survive the end of the story. And just when you did that, I was like, it looks like a spider.
I haven't thought of that, but it does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's eight legs, 8 hands.
That was the thing.
Yeah. So
weird.
Approach at your peril.
Yeah.
Good or bad.
Label.
Yeah. And that's moving on to the king. I mean,
who by contrast is so, even though he's fire of fire, isn't it? Yeah. And you can see that in the card, and yet there's something quite stoic about him.
But for me, he's the most powerful of the kings. I mean, this is the 4th of what I call the pure element cards, in that, he isn't a combination of elements. Kings represent the realm of fire, wands, fire anyway. And also the reason to me, this is the most powerful of the kings is because fire is the swiftest and most powerful of the elements. If we think of the sort of traditional 4 elements of earth, air, fire, and water, the ancients weren't far wrong. They didn't have our scientific knowledge, but they intuited what we now know scientifically, because actually what they intuited were actually 4 states of matter. What they called earth is the solid state. Water, the liquid state, which is the next level of energy up. Air, gas, the next level of energy up again, where matter changes its shape. And then finally, where the actual molecular structure of matter breaks down into flux while matter is reacting, and we're into the realm of plasma, which is that higher charged energy state again from air. And into the realm of fire, you are in that realm of plasma, the most charged state of matter that we know on Earth. And yet this guy is pure. But then he combines that purity of the most powerful element with the wisdom and maturity of a king. So I was quite deliberate with this. This is absolute firestorm, and we can see rampant lions in there, and all the volatility of those beasts, which actually represent fire anyway. But he stands within that firestorm, perfectly regal, perfectly sedate. Do that, and it's different. I mean, wham, he just lets loose.
Yeah.
But upright, you have a maturity, an ability to kind of channel the power of the element. I love the kind of description of him as a spiritual elder, or if he was, he could, he's either a spiritual elder within a tribe or a community, but then again within a workplace, this is a workplace elder. This is somebody who's climbed the ladder, but they have years and years of experience and authority, and they're a benevolent presence within that workplace. I mean, as a lover, you're kind of talking somebody very fiery and passionate, but at the same time, somebody very protective, very stable. But again, I mean, if you look at the negative aspect of this card, that benevolent workplace ruler becomes a tyrant. The lover becomes somebody controlling, possessive, and destructive. The spiritual elder becomes a cult leader. How many times have we seen people descend into spiritual corruption in positions of leadership, and then they become controlling, destructive, cult-like figures? And that's the sort of inversion of this king. But he's powerful. He's in a firestorm, but at the same time, he's got it. He's an authority.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the page, the knight and the queen, there's a lot more there's a lot more outward action to it, but it's almost like they get that all out of their system, and by the time it's the king's turn, he doesn't need to do all of that because he's so sure of himself, and he knows he embodies it, that he doesn't actually have to display it, because people know that he has that within him, and that he can if he has to.
Yeah, male or female. I mean, I kind of let's sort of forget the male or female aspect of this and see them as sort of masculine and feminine archetypes, or basically, to me, a helpful way to view these is ruler and consort. So as consort, she can actually get away with a lot more freedom of expression than he can as ultimate ruler. And I think that's the difference between the king and queen. Now that can be the other way around. The ruler could be female, the consort could be male, as far as I'm concerned. But that's the difference of expression here. And again, that's the difference between the sort of flowing water and fire, or the pure fire of fire. But I think as well, he is very much aware of just his capacity to burn. So the good aspect of this king is aware of that and keeps it in check. The negative aspect doesn't. That's when the tyrant appears. So but actually, I think for me, the suit of wands, the courts in the suit of wands, was some of the most interesting to create, because of the sort of clashes and conflicts that fire brings. So we just
both
finished
transformative and destructive at the same time.
Very
much. A hard one to sort of pin down.
It is.
But I think of the 4 suits in most decks, I kind of gravitate towards the wands for some reason. Probably because I'm meant to be a triple fire sign, and it's probably why I keep going to them. But they're often the go-to ones that I check out first.
I'm a Gemini, love. I mean, I should be running into the realm of swords, and I'm running away from it all the time. I must check my chart and see why. It probably say, but
see, I checked my chart, and there's no getting away from it. I'm an Aries sun, a Leo moon, a Sagittarius rising, so a fire, and I recently found out that my Venus is Taurus, so that's Earth, but not not much use. So we'll leave that there.
Yes, we'll park that one for now. Oh, thank you, love. It's great. We've now finished the suit of wands, haven't we?
We have.
In the next one, we're going to take a little diversion. Rather than going straight onto cups, we are going to do part 2 of the major arcana. And then following that video, we'll cover the suit of cups, and then we will round off with the last of the majors. So hopefully, if I talk nicely to Ken, he's going to carry on this journey with me, because we've kind of had quite a bit of fun with this so far, haven't we?
Yeah, I'm happy to keep going.
Fantastic. And thanks to everyone who's watched. I hope you've enjoyed this, and we'll see you for the next one. Take care.
Bye-bye.